I live near the airport. Give me 3 seconds.
Thank you.
I did it on purpose, I know it. So my name is Mary Sensi from Star 92.9. And if you are not from the area, I'm on the morning show with Mike and Mary in the morning, and you can listen online at star929.com or with your Alexa device. So if you get up early at 5, that's Eastern Standard Time. I'd love it if you would, take a listen. Otherwise, if you're from here, well, hopefully you'll listen to Star 92.9. And we started this cooking event just because, one, I miss seeing people, I miss the events too, so I could do something really fun with my friend Katie Webster. And you might have heard this already, but I met Katie at the gym. She was a trainer for Body Pump and Body Attack, and I just thought she was so fit and healthy. And then I found out that she was a food blogger of healthy recipes. So I followed her on Instagram, and I took a lot of her recipes. Oh, Lisa, here comes Lisa. All the time. So definitely follow Healthy Seasonal on Instagram. Try her recipes. I love her recipes. Not only are they healthy, but they're really tasty. A quick story. When I first got married a few years ago, my cat, by the way, meet my cat. That's the cat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's about to jump into my eggs. So, oh, there we go. All right. So he hears me talking to myself and he's like losing his mind. So when I first got married, my husband's aunt and uncle had him over for dinner here, and I wanted to make over for brunch, and I wanted to make a tart, a breakfast tart. Like, why would I do something so complicated when I want to impress the family for the first time, like cooking something the first time? So I DM'd Katie, and I was like, help me out with this tart. What do I do? And I think it was specialty. I don't know if it was vegetarian or there was something different that I need some guidance with, and she gave me the perfect advice, and it came out perfect. It was a Sunday morning, and you were so kind. You're like, I just want to do my maple syrup with my family, but you definitely helped me out. So I'm excited to have Katie back again. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Please welcome Katie.
Oh, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm trying something different this time. I have an earbud thing in, so let me know if you have a hard time hearing. But thank you for having me back. This has been a lot of fun. And if you were here last time and came back, that's a sign that things are going well, and I appreciate it. And if you're new, we hope that you feel free to just, unmute yourself whenever you want and ask questions. We're here to have a good time and to connect. So if you don't feel comfortable unmuting, you can also put questions into the chat as well. So that's totally fine. So today we are making a recipe that's from my cookbook. So you guys all have that. It is the Smokey and Sweet Turkey Chili, and it has maple syrup in it. If you don't know, my cookbook came out 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, and it was all about maple syrup. So this is one of the recipes. I love this recipe because people are like, what, you put maple syrup in chili? And I'm like, yes, I do. And you'll taste it and you'll know why. It's so good. So, and then once I decided we were going to do that, I was like, we can't have chili without cornbread. So I threw in a cornbread recipe. I thought it'd be fun to just have something to eat with it. So are you guys ready to start cooking?
Ready.
Yeah. Okay, good. So your oven should be preheating, and let's start making our cornbread right away because it takes about 25 minutes to cook. So we should get it started. So what I like to do is I actually like to start with the dry mix first. And the way that I make this recipe all the time. This isn't actually a recipe I developed. This is a recipe from Eating Well. I used to work in their test kitchen, and one of my coworkers developed it while I was working there, and I've made it ever since, and that was 15 years ago. So it has whole grain flour. So it has, oh yay, hey Jen, I'm glad that you made it. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're starting our cornbread. Are you going to be cooking along?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So let's
Preheat your oven.
Oh yeah, preheat your oven if you haven't done so already. So let's mix together our whole grain flour and the cornmeal. You can use any kind of cornmeal. So if you have that coarse kind of artisan cornmeal, that works really beautifully in this. Now this is Yankee style cornbread. This has 3 tablespoons of sugar. And some people don't like sugar in their cornbread. I happen to love it. So maybe that's why I love this recipe so much. And then there's the baking powder and baking soda and the salt. So that's our dry mix. And then I use a whisk to mix this together. And here's the trick. So if you do this first, then your whisk is clean. Like it doesn't get dirty from that. But if you do your wet mix first, then, and you put your whisk into your dry mix, then it gets all clumpy. Then we have our wet ingredients, which is buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk, you can use milk with some acid added to it. So just put like a tablespoon of vinegar or lemon in the bottom of your cup and then pour in regular milk and let it sit and it will sour on its own. I'm gonna add my egg right into my measuring cup. If you have room in your measuring cup, go ahead and do that. It's not a huge volume, so it hopefully won't overflow. And then we also have our canola oil. I use either avocado oil or canola oil for my neutral cooking oil. And then I'm just gonna whisk that up. It's kind of tricky to whisk it up. You can go like this too to get it going. And then just sort of break up that egg. How are we doing? Is everybody thumbs up if you're getting yours already? Okay, good, good, good. It's okay if you guys are going like a step a little bit slower than me. There will be plenty of time to catch up. So, all right. And then once that's all whisked together, then I'm just gonna combine the two. All right, so then I'm just gonna pour my wet into my dry. And with baking, I like to make sure that I scrape everything out. So I actually gonna use my rubber spatula to get that all out. Baking is more precise and it actually matters when you have the right amount of liquid versus dry. And it's not really something where you really worry about overworking it, but you don't want to be like beating it to death here. You just basically want to be moistening your batter. And as you can see, as you moisten yours, it will start to really, you'll see that it's very light, that the buttermilk starts acting with the baking soda almost immediately. So you really don't want to mix this too far in advance or you'll lose out on some leavening. I'm just going to spray my baking pan with some cooking spray here. I always do this recipe in a glass baking dish, but I noticed on the actual recipe itself on the Eating Well website, it says 8x8 baking pan. So I guess it works in a metal pan too, but I just always happen to use a glass one. This one's actually one of those ceramic ones. So I'm just going to scrape in my batter. And by the way, I have made this, I've doubled this and done it in a larger thing. I've actually done a quadruple batch and done it in a great big like hotel pan. You can add corn kernels to it. You can add chili to it. I mean, it's a great recipe.
How to pin her.
Okay, and then I'm just going to spread the top to sort of get it in nice and even, and then we're just going to pop it in the oven. Just like that. In it goes. Now let's see, set a timer for 25 minutes.
I don't need to do this.
All right, timer's going. Okay, so how are we doing? Is everyone sort of catching up there with their cornmeal? Looks like Ellie, we can't see you, but I'm just wondering if you are cooking along with us. And Marcus and Doreen, let us know if you have any questions as we're going, if you need me to repeat anything. All right, it looks like Diane and Betty are ready to go. I'm gonna start working on cutting up the veggies here. And we're gonna do a little multitasking, but I see that people are busy, so I'm not gonna push that too much. So I'm gonna start with my garlic. So it calls for a tablespoon of garlic. Have you already chopped your veggies, guys? Am I the only one that has? Okay, so I'm just gonna start with the garlic. So I'm just gonna press the garlic to get the skins to come off more easily. You don't want to like smash it, but you know, it just comes off much more easily if you press it here. So does anybody prefer to buy pre-chopped garlic?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Is that pre-chopped? Okay. So I tend to prefer to cut it myself. I find that the flavor is more pure, and I also have read the label of the pre-chopped stuff, and there's a lot of preservatives added to it, which I don't really want in my chili. So I recommend just getting in the habit of chopping the garlic. It's, you know, something that you can keep on hand, keep it in a drawer, keep it in the dark, and it will last for a long time. Can you see what I'm doing here okay with this second view? So I'm just gonna chop it into slices to begin, and I'm keeping my fingers sort of tucked down so that they don't get chopped off. And I just cut it into like basically slabs. And then I'm just gonna repeat with the other two. And I'm just guesstimating how much I'm gonna need. I need a tablespoon, but I'm doing three small cloves. And then I'm just gonna go crosswise across them. This is not the like official way if I was working in a fine dining restaurant to how to mince garlic, but this is the way that I do it, and I think it works just fine. And in my knife skills class in culinary school, the chef said, just keep chopping until you don't see any more big pieces and you're good to go. All right, so I'm gonna just push this off to the other side of the cutting board, and then I'm gonna work on the onion. So you need a nice large onion for this. I believe it calls for a Spanish onion, which is a yellow onion. You can also use a sweet onion. I love sweet onions. They're naturally
Hey, Katie,
sweet.
last time, didn't somebody say, show us their onion that looked like this? Who
Yeah.
did that? I think it was Lisa.
Yeah, it's totally fine to use those. Just pull the green stuff out of the middle. So this is how I've prepped my onion. So I've cut it in half. I've left the root end intact, and I've cut off the stem end, and I cut it in half. And now I'm just gonna peel that outer layer off, because this outer layer is kind of like, do you see how it's sort of like see-through? That won't break down as it cooks, so it's no good. You just need to put that in the compost. And then you have a nice onion to work with a nice flat cutting edge. Good, good. All right. And then I'm going to place it cut side down. You know what? Let's pause for a moment and let's start heating our pots while we're chopping our onion, because it takes a minute to get that pot hot, and you want it to be hot when you're ready to add the turkey. So it should be a medium high heat under your soup pot. Okay, so with the onion, so I work with my hand on top and I press down firmly so that it doesn't slip, but I also make sure that my fingers aren't wrapped down so that my knife can't cut into it. And I cut horizontally into it a couple times, but I don't go through that root end. And I sort of have to slide it so that it'll go through because there's so much resistance. So I just cut it basically 2 times, and then I'm gonna cut it through this way, but again, I'm not gonna go all the way through. here I'm keeping my fingers down, sort of clawing it to keep it so that it doesn't slip away from me. And then I'm going to turn it this way and I'm going to cut it into a nice dice. I'm just going to do the same thing on the other one. So somebody mentioned that they don't love turkey, and that is totally fine. So I actually have a great meatless chili recipe that I developed earlier this year. It is on healthyseasonalrecipes.com. It is a slow cooker recipe. It has a lot of sweet potato in it, which is great. But Mary asked me earlier, if somebody doesn't like beans, what can we do instead? And again, you can add more veggies, and this is where you would do it. So if you weren't doing the turkey, you could saute sweet potatoes here. You could saute diced bell peppers. You could add zucchini. So you can really just bulk it up with lots of veggies. And then there's also lots of, meatless products as well that you can use. Okay, so I've rotated my camera here, so you should be able to see how's that? Okay, so we're gonna start cooking. So let's add a tablespoon of oil to our soup pot. And we're gonna start out by browning the turkey on its own. And the reason why we wanna do it on its own is we don't wanna introduce extra moisture into the pot. We want the flavors to be enhanced by that caramelization, and it won't brown if there's too much stuff in the pot with it, or if there's too much wet stuff in the pot with it. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and I can see that my oil is starting to shimmer a little bit. I'm gonna wait for a second because this pot is really heavy, but if yours is not as heavy as mine, you can add your turkey as soon as your oil is hot. I don't wanna hold anybody back or let their oil get too hot.
Would that Beyond Meat, the Beyond Beef burger stuff, would that work?
It would work really well. Yeah, I think that would work really well. I don't think you need to cook it nearly as long, but yeah, you would basically brown it up in this step. And then after we brown it, we're gonna set it aside. So you would do the same thing.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and add mine now. There's a sizzle, so that's a good sign. I don't know if you can hear that with this ear thing or not, but so I'm gonna get rid of this plate now that had the yucky turkey on it. And we're just gonna basically break up the meat here.
Katie, Misty, no. Yay!
Yay, that's what I have too. This is kind of loud. I'm just washing my hands, you guys. I got a little turkey on my thumb. I want to make sure that I clean that off. Nope, and I lost my, there it is. So basically, what I was saying is that, the moisture will inhibit the browning. So if as you're doing this step, you start to notice like a lot of water in your skillet or in your sauce soup pot, you can turn your heat up, okay? You want to evaporate all that out because you really want to be like frying it in that oil and really browning it in that oil. And some turkey that you buy at the grocery store has added moisture added to it, like a sodium solution added to it. Because it is so lean, they do that so that like if you make a burger out of it, that it'll be more juicy. But in a recipe like this, it actually is counteractive. Like you actually don't want that. And so, if you just buy conventional turkey, a lot of times during this browning step, you'll get a lot of that liquid in there. And in that case, just turn up the heat, evaporate all that out, and then you'll get your browning once the liquid's out of there. it's for the same reason that we are doing this alone. Instead of adding the onions and the garlic in, because we don't want the onions and garlic to drop the temperature of the pot and make it so that it won't brown.
I'll be curious to see how different this comes up because we always mix in the onions with the meat whenever we're doing anything like this. So I want to see the like, you know, I'm not going to tell my husband because he's always like the type to, you know, take control in the kitchen. So we'll see what he says.
Okay, good. I love it.
But I like the theory around it, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You know, I'm a huge fan of just experimenting and trying things and doing like side-by-side comparisons, or like just, you know, trying it and then saying, okay, this needs more flavor. How can I improve that? And I think that that's where this came from. I am a fan of adding it all together as well, just because it's easy. But I remember developing this recipe, and that was a long time ago. You know, I developed the recipes for that book in 2014. And I remember working on this, and it was so hard because I couldn't get it to have the flavor I knew I wanted it to have. And my guess is I ended up breaking this out and having it be its own step because it was just not flavorful enough. Okay, so my meat is like not pink anymore, so I'm gonna take it out and put it on a plate. If yours isn't quite there yet, that's fine. Just keep cooking it a little bit. But we need to transfer this to the plate. I know I didn't put this in the mise en place list for you. I'm sorry about that. I forgot. But I'm going to use like a slotted spoon here, and I'm just going to put it on the plate. It's all going to go back in and keep cooking. So if yours is not like 100% cooked through, that's totally fine. It'll cook for 15 minutes in a little bit. So you can see there is liquid here in the bottom of my skillet, and I'm going to just turn up my heat a little bit and evaporate some of that out of there. I keep calling this a skillet. I don't know why. It's definitely not a skillet. And I do know the difference between a skillet and a pot. This is actually a Dutch oven, technically, because it can go in the oven. It has 2 handles. Okay. How are we doing?
Horrible.
Everybody's working, slaving away there. Oh, Diane's on task there. Jen, how are you doing? You're good? Okay.
What are we supposed to do with the
So-
extra juice in the pot?
What's the question, Janet?
What are we supposed to do with the extra water stuff that's in the pot?
Okay, so I'm actually evaporating mine out right now. I just turned up the heat and it's just sort of sizzling in there and it's just evaporating out. We're
Okay.
gonna add more oil to it to cook our garlic and onion, but we'll have an easier time of getting the effect we want if we just get rid of that liquid now instead of waiting for it with the garlic and onion. You can tell by the way it sounds, like once you that snapping and popping stops, you know that the moisture is cooked out of there. Now we're supposed to add another tablespoon of oil here. Do you see? I don't know if you can see this from my phone here, but this is like really nice and brown right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and add another tablespoon of oil, and I'm going to add my garlic and onion right into the pot. And I'm actually also going to add in my salt now. So if you're on a reduced sodium diet, you don't need to add salt because we're going to be adding canned tomatoes and canned beans. Just totally skip it. I've got another tip for you in a minute, but I'm adding the salt in now because I am using salt, and the salt helps when you're cooking the onions and garlic. It helps to bring out their juices and their moisture so that they actually will soften better in the.
Katie, is this what I would put my vegetables in, my zucchini in? Because
I wouldn't, Mary. I think that you should put them in with the canned tomatoes because they will inhibit this from browning. And right now we're just trying to brown this. So again, it's all about that moisture. And if you did turn your heat up earlier, you want to turn it back down to medium high, by the way. It's all about controlling the amount of moisture. And when you don't have moisture, you get browning. If you have too much browning, you turn the heat down and it'll start to simmer and release its juices, and that will slow everything down. You can always add a tablespoon of water. You can put the lid on. That also can help add moisture to something that's browning too quickly. But this is looking really good. Do you see how this is browning up really beautifully? That also has to do with the fact that there was a lot of nice fond in the bottom of the soup pot. So if you were in the last class, you know that the stuff in the bottom of the skillet that's brown and crusty is called fond, and that is the stuff that adds flavor to your dish. So this is something that you won't get, Lisa. This is something you won't get when you do it the way where you add the meat and the veggies together. You won't get this brown stuff. And
Yeah.
this is what Guy Fieri would call Flavor City or Flavor Town or whatever. That's what this is.
Okay, good to know. So I made a mistake of using a skillet, and then I have like a baby La Crusette, like it's like kind of not as big.
Okay, hang on. Keep using your skillet. There's a logical place to switch over in a second.
All right.
I'm gonna put in my other AirPod so I can hear a little bit better. I may start talking even louder. Oh wait, okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So we're just looking for, we don't want it to get too brown, but I just want this to soften a little bit. How are we doing on time? Perfect. Okay, so I've already measured out all of my spices. I don't know if you guys have already measured yours out. There's quite a few, and it seems like a massive amount, doesn't it? Like it's wrong. This is why it took me so long to develop this recipe. I kept needing to add more spices. It was not even close to what I wanted it to be when I started. Okay, I'm ready to add my spices. I can tell because things are starting to stick a little bit along the edges, and the veggies are nice and soft, and there's obviously lots of dark brown pieces here. So I'm gonna go ahead and add all of those spices to the onions and garlic. And this is what we talked about in the minestrone class. This is where you are blooming the seasonings in the hot oil. So you could add all of these seasonings right into the liquid, you know, with the tomato and everything, but oil actually becomes like it carries the spices, and it also toasts the spices. So it's like, you know, it just intensifies them that much more. Like if you think about the difference between a spice or a toasted nut or a raw nut, the toasted one has so much flavor. That's all it needs. Now we're gonna deglaze with our vinegar. So if you did not put in the salt, you wanna use half the amount of vinegar. So if you are on the low sodium diet and you did not use the salt, only use half the amount of vinegar, okay? So use like 2.5 teaspoons if you didn't add salt. But for the rest of you who did use that, it's 1.5 tablespoons of vinegar. This deglazes, and you just wanna scrape up the bottom of the pot. It evaporates almost immediately, and then you wanna add in your water, a cup of water. So this should sort of become like a nice sort of thick mixture here. And this is where you want to scrape up the bottom of the pot, make sure that you don't have any crusty pieces that are attached on the bottom, get all of that fond off the bottom. And once it comes up to the simmer, you're ready to add in the rest of the ingredients. So now you can add in your tomatoes. If you don't know about the magic of this product here, this is my absolute favorite type of tomatoes. They're fire roasted, and they add even more smoky flavor to this recipe. So those go right in. Our beans go in now. And before you do anything else, I want you to just stir this together and then let's taste what we have so far, okay? We're not gonna add our turkey back right this second. We're just gonna taste what this tastes like without the maple syrup. And let me find a spoon and we'll see what it tastes like. It's kind of gross, I have to say. I mean, it's like incredibly sour and the spices are like way too spicy. Yeah, it's not good. So just keep that in your mind. Now let's add our turkey back in. Any juices from the plate can go in as well. And we're gonna add in our maple syrup. So if you can find it when you shop, look for the dark stuff. This has the most flavor. And I'm gonna find that spatula and make sure that I get every drop out of this measuring cup. And then I'm just gonna stir everything together and increase my heat to high in order to bring this back up. Oh, did we add our beans? Yes, we did. So the beans should be drained, I should have said. I don't know if I mentioned that. So I'm gonna just increase my heat here. So the reason I wanted you guys to taste that
Where are you going?
is because I actually, when I had my cookbook and I had to go on the book tour, nobody would come and talk to me. I would set up in these like bookstores and stuff. And like, I'd be sitting there with my stack of books and nobody would want to come over. And so I quickly learned to make food and offer samples of what I had, like of some of the recipes. And this was one of the ones that I always brought with me because it's so easy to do. You can make it ahead. I would make it, throw it in a crock pot and then drive to wherever I had to go and then just plug in the crock pot and then serve out little samples of it. Well, I made it so many times that I literally did it without even reading the recipe. And one time when I went to King Arthur Flour in Norwich, I ended up forgetting the maple syrup and handing it out to people for, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. And then one of the ladies like called my bluff. She's like, you know, I really don't taste any maple syrup. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I didn't say anything to her. And I said, excuse me. And I went over and they sold maple syrup in the baker's store. And I bought some maple syrup and I was like, and I poured it in and it fixed everything. It was all good. But I know from that experience that it really does make a huge difference in the way that this tastes. Once this comes up to a simmer, just turn it down so that it just maintains a simmer, whatever that means on your stove. For me, it's pretty low because the stove happens to be super hot. Let's all take a second to just sort of clean up a little bit and then we can work on our toppings. And we also have some fun trivia too. So I'm just gonna get some of this stuff out of the way. Okay. How's everybody doing with theirs?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I am still sauteing my onions and garlic. I'm way behind here, but at what point do I want to transfer it to the La Crusette?
Oh, after you deglaze. So you're going to deglaze and you're going to add that water. And then after that, you can transfer it over to the other pot.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. How's everybody else doing? Jen, how are you doing there? You're good? Okay. That is my timer. So this is the timer for the cornbread, you guys. So I'm going to check in on that and see how mine looks. You may want to check in on yours. Ooh. I'm just going to sort of, oh no. So I just sort of tapped the top of mine and it I could tell that it wasn't set up because it sort of like decompressed a little bit. So I'm just gonna put it back in. I'm gonna let it go for another like, I think it could use maybe 4 more minutes, maybe 4.5 minutes.
Katie,
Yeah.
so I have a question because I think I made a mistake. I thought they were whole tomatoes and they're ground tomatoes.
Yes, they're supposed to be ground. That's
I
right.
thought I did the right thing.
Yep. Yeah, the crushed is what you wanted.
God. I was like, oh, what? Okay, good.
Although I do love whole tomatoes, whole canned tomatoes. That's one of my
Me
favorites.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. And by the way, my mistake with my flour is smelling fantastic with
Oh,
my
good.
cornbread.
Yes. So
So
we'll
when I went to this, do you want me to wait or to say it now?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I went to the store and bought everything for tonight's, because I wanted to cook along this time, I got everything except cornmeal for the cornbread, like the most important thing. So I had almond flour and asked if I could use that instead. So we're gonna see what happens. And I put 2 eggs in under Katie's suggestion.
Yeah. Who knows if it'll
We'll
work?
see.
If it does, we'll have to write it down because, you know, cornless cornbread may be something that people search for. Who knows?
Exactly. It may be a new thing, Mary, for all we know.
Yeah.
See, exactly. I love it.
As we are finishing up here, I'm just going to start working on my cilantro, but we have a few trivia questions that we came up for you for you guys. And we thought that it would be fun. There's no like prize. You can just like count yourself a smarty pants, a maple syrup smarty pants if you get a question right.
So we do have the $100 gift card that just everybody goes in the drawing for that. That's to Homeport. So we do have that. Okay. You want me to ask the first question?
Sure.
Because
yeah,
we
go
all know
ahead.
Katie is she's a sugarer as well. So maple sugar.
Actually, my husband is literally gathering the sap right now for boiling tonight.
I was curious what it was going to be like this, because the weather was perfect for it for a little while.
Yeah.
All right. How come we can only make maple syrup this time of year? Does anybody have any idea why can we only make maple syrup this time of year? Oh, Lisa's got her thumb up. You know why?
I don't know if I'm allowed to like.
Yeah, can we just see it?
Well, go ahead. You go ahead and answer.
Well,
I don't know.
The weather, right?
Yes, so the cold nights, so the trees have been freezing for the winter, and the warm days allow the sap in the trees to move along, and they tap them, and then they have lines running through the trees all through the woods, and then they gather it in a bucket, and then you bring it to a sugar house and they boil it to a certain consistency. And that's how you have your maple syrup, I think, right, Katie?
That's right. And one of the things that Mary asked, she was like, well, I don't know why you can't do that in the fall. And the reason you can't do it in the fall is that the trees have to go dormant first, because what happens is they have to store all of the sugar from their leaves into their cells or whatever. And so that's why, and specifically sugar maples, they have a very high sugar content to prevent themselves from freezing, apparently. Like, these types of trees only live in colder climates. And so that's why. Yeah.
That's cool.
Good one.
All right, now you have to answer this one, Katie. Why is maple syrup so expensive?
I want to know if anybody knows this one.
I mean, is it really? I mean, it must be because it produces so little.
It takes so much of the sap to boil down to, or the whatever comes out of the tree,
That's
to boil
right.
down into the syrup.
That's right. So it takes, like, on average about 40 gallons of sap coming drip by drip by drip out of the taps, out of the trees, and then it has to be boiled down, and those 40 gallons makes 1 gallon of syrup. And it can only be produced for a few weeks when the weather conditions are correct. So between those two things, it really is a commodity where it just, you know, is very expensive to make. My timer went off again. I'm gonna check in on my cornbread. Has anybody's cornbread come out yet?
Yeah.
Okay,
Question, Katie.
so mine, oh yeah, now mine's set up. Okay. So it didn't really brown very much, but this is what mine looks like here.
Oh, nice.
And I'm just gonna set it down to cool slightly.
Gallons out of one tree of maples.
How many gallons?
One
You know,
tree.
I actually don't know the answer to that, but like yesterday, we got more than a gallon of sap per tree.
Okay.
So, you know, and if it runs for 3 weeks, you could probably get close to a gallon per tree, theoretically. A gallon of actual syrup, I mean.
Also
I'm
depends
gonna chop my
how big the
cilantro.
tree
So
is.
if you're putting cilantro on top of your chili, now is probably a good time to do that.
I have another maple syrup question.
Okay.
I think somebody else had a question too, though. Can you make syrup from other types of trees?
Oh yeah, does anyone know this one?
Do they make like birch syrup or something?
Yes.
Really?
And yes, they make a birch. And I think there's also, is it hickory? There's another one too. But yeah, they're nowhere near as good though, unfortunately. And they have a lower sugar content. So it's like 100 gallons of birch sap to make a gallon of birch syrup. But you should try it sometime if you find it.
There's different maple trees and is there a particular one that's only for making maple?
So
Sorry.
the one that we love here in Vermont and in Canada is the sugar maple. I don't remember the Latin name of it, but it's like Ace or something. And then there's also like red maples, and
Right.
I think there's a white maple. And I've actually gone out into a sugar bush with like an actual like bona fide sugar, and he can just tell, even when there's no leaves on the trees, he can be like, oh yeah, that one's a red maple, just by looking up at it, and he can tell. I can't even, I mean, like when I'm out there with my husband working on our stuff, I'm like, is this one a maple? Like I really can't tell at all. So I'm not an expert on it at all, but yes, there are all different kinds of maples.
Oh, that's funny. That's cool. What's the difference between grade A and grade B syrup? Does anybody know that? I just know the one's darker.
I don't know. I admittingly have maple syrup issues. When I go to visit my mother-in-law in Michigan, she'll just like, I'll bring her like a beautiful bottle like this and be like, it's so good to see you. And she'll open up the cabinet and use the like BJ's maple syrup. And it's like, what are you thinking? Right?
Do we have somebody here from Michigan?
My husband's from Michigan. Is anyone in the crowd from Michigan?
Did we have somebody from somewhere? Oh, I don't know what I'm thinking.
So
I live
does
in West
anybody know
Virginia now. This is Doreen. I live in West Virginia now, but I'm from Chicago, and I've been to Michigan.
Okay. That works.
Enough. I love it.
I've lived in North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, all over.
Nice. Too.
Nice.
So does anybody know the answer about the grade A and grade B? So that was actually a trick question, so it's okay if you didn't get it. So actually, grade B is kind of an anachronism. And so if you're a Vermonter, you've heard of it before, but they actually don't. There's like really, you can't buy grade B syrup at a grocery store anymore. It's not available to the public. They totally revamped their grading system. And so now the way it is, everything you can buy in a store is grade A. And it's now described by the color of it and how it tastes. So there's golden light, there is amber rich, and dark robust. So there's 3 different grades. Oh, and then there's extra dark, which is called, I don't even know what it's called. But anyway, so those are the 3 that you would mainly see, and those are all grade A. They're all high quality. From my perspective, I always recommend the dark if you can find it because it has the most flavor. I think my chili's done, you guys. I can tell because when I stir it, it doesn't like leave a line in the bottom of the pan, but it is really, it's thickened up quite a bit. So I think it's there. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the heat. I'm chopping my avocado. Feel free to add cheese on top of your chili or sour cream or whatever you like on top of your chili if you're not an avocado cilantro person. I even like putting raw onion on top of mine too. I love it. Everybody's busy. Okay, so.
I love cojito cheese. Is anyone in the room a cojito cheese person?
What is that?
Oh, it's a Mexican cheese. Katie, are you familiar with it?
I am. I would sort of describe it as being sort of like feta cheese for somebody who hasn't tried it before. It's crumbly like feta is.
It's a Mexican cheese. So and it's like not, that's a good way of describing it, like a softer feta cheese. It's good. I love it on all my Mexican dishes.
Yeah, I think that would actually be yummy on this.
When can we cut into our bread?
You can cut into it whenever you want. It doesn't really need to cool. It says in the recipe, I think, to cool it 10 minutes, but I've served it piping hot before.
Because I'm so excited to try my concoction.
Yeah. My chili is like gonna burn my mouth, I can tell.
Why is it really?
I'm gonna cut my cornbread too, Mary. I think that's a good idea. Can you see this over here? No, probably not.
Bread knife.
But yeah, I can see your, yeah, there you go. I can see it. There you go.
Okay.
Did you mix
So
the
it's supposed
cilantro?
to serve
You just put it on top. Okay.
So this cornbread, I think it serves 9. That's the way I always cut it, is 3 by 3. I also made it like in a pie plate too and just cut it into wedges. I'm gonna go ahead and top my chili. So I'm gonna put cilantro on top of mine. I actually made this recipe and brought it to Jane Lindholm from Vermont Public Radio, and we were in the studio, and she took a bite of it and was coughing, and I was like, oh my gosh, is it too hot? And she was like, oh no, I lived in Thailand. And I was like, oh my God, I was sweating bullets. I was so nervous. I think it just she had something in her throat. It was really, I was so nervous. Okay, and then the pepitas. We should get a picture. We should get a screenshot, Mary, of everyone with their bowls of chili too.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you put cheese on top? Anybody else?
I didn't, but I love cheese on chili.
Who put cheese on theirs?
I sometimes like to put a little lime juice too in my Mexican dishes, like at the end, just a touch.
Definitely. And in fact, I'm surprised that wasn't in this original recipe as something to add, maybe because of the vinegar.
Yeah, maybe. Right.
I wish I had a bowl ready. I got called in for my COVID shot, so I had to run and do that.
Oh,
no.
That's,
it was my first one, so I had to do
good
that
for you.
first.
Yeah, you did.
But yeah, that's more important.
So I just put the tomatoes in and the beans.
Oh, okay.
And
you've got a few minutes.
I never buy anything sugary, so here's my new maple syrup.
Oh, good. You got some.
Coon Family Farms. The only one I found that was natural and et cetera.
Yep.
So
I've
organic.
actually talked to Arthur Coombs on the phone. When I was writing my book, I interviewed him. He's a really nice guy.
Oh, cool.
Family run
Oh.
business.
Mhm.
So one of the things that people asked me, like when I was writing my book, they were like, why are you writing a book about maple syrup? Like, why should people cook with maple syrup instead of like just using regular sugar? And somebody like Arthur Coombs is the answer why, like one of the answers why, is that when you are buying a jar of maple syrup, no matter where you are, you're buying it from a small producer because it's something that can't be mass produced just by the nature of it. So it's a really cool thing when you're buying that, you are supporting small communities. How's your almond flour cornbread there, Mary?
Not even gonna lie, it's so delicious. You wouldn't even know that it was not cornbread because it has, the thing I loved about your cornbread is it wasn't cakey. It tastes like cornbread with a tad sweetness, and that's what this did with the almond flour.
Oh, good. So it worked.
It's so, oh my God, I'm gonna eat right in your, oh, so rude. All right.
Has
I'm
anybody
gonna try
tried their
this
chili
chili.
yet?
No.
Try the chili now and compare it to that bite that you had before where it was quote unquote gross. It's like night and day.
Oh. Oh my God, I can't right now.
So the maple syrup is a heat enabler. Like it allows you to add more spice to stuff, and it makes it so that you can like handle more heat. I mean, this is pretty spicy, but as I said, I've taken this recipe to cooks, to bookstores and stuff all over, and most people can handle this level of heat. It is an two taste kind of a thing. I'll try it with my bite of
It's
cornbread.
delicious.
No, it's so good, and I'm amazed that you can get both like flavors, and one doesn't compete with the other. You know what I mean? Like the sweetness is very pronounced, but so is the spiciness. I don't know. It's really interesting. It's good.
I'm gonna be super happy.
Excellent.
That's a real Jennifer.
Really excellent.
The cornbread is so good too.
This cornbread recipe,
Is that
I tell
cornbread?
you.
It was
And
so-
they don't even have a photo of it on their website. I'm like, I should offer to just give them a photo because I make it so much.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, this deserves a photo on the internet. It's so good.
so easy.
Yeah. And literally, if you don't have cornmeal, try almond flour. I should save some for you, Katie, and I don't know, mail it to you or get it to you somehow. So you can at least
I
try
know.
it. You need to try this because I won't eat the whole thing.
I'll
Well,
have to
Shauna.
do it next time. I always keep almond flour on hand.
Everybody's name ready to go. All right. Oh, there's the cat in the window. That's Dash.
Oh, hi, Dash.
Oh, cute. Okay, so if you have your bowl, hold it up. I'm trying to not slosh it forward.
I know, same. Oh, who's ready? All right, 3, 2, 1, smile. Well, thank you. Thank everybody. We couldn't have done this without everybody showing up in news. I love seeing everybody. It's so fun. I love Katie. HealthySeasonalRecipes.com, Healthy Seasonal on Instagram. She does cooking demonstrations all the time on Instagram Live.
Yeah.
And please, let's take you off mute and clap. Let's give a round of applause for Katie because she did such a great job. So fun.
Yay!
Thank you for having me again, Mary.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Katie.